Welcome to College Recruiter, where we believe that every student and recent grad deserves a great career. I'm Anna Peters, and today I'm talking to Katrina Kibben, who is a recruitment marketing consultant at 3 Years Media in sunny Boulder, Colorado. I invited her to join us today because I wanted to offer kind of a helping hand to TA leaders who might have a robust recruitment marketing campaign working for them, especially as it ties to college students and recent grads. But what happens if your recruitment marketing campaign just hasn't produced enough of the right candidates that you were hoping for? So Katrina she helps her hiring teams translate their brand into compelling stories that create a better candidate experience and also optimize career site conversions. So I thought she'd be a good brain to pick for this topic. Thanks for joining, Katrina.
Thank you for having me.
What was the question that I just asked you before we started?
So you were asking about measurement strategy and just how that becomes a real struggle, because recruiters have so much going on, right? They're trying to do a lot for a lot of different roles, and how that translates into activity or even how they perceive success in that activity. I think that's a bit of a moving target, right? So the thing where I find that I'm having this conversation a lot with new customers especially is that I'm finding that they're taking kind of a blanket recruitment marketing strategy approach. So the typical big agency comes in and says, oh, you need more in the top of the funnel, aka you need more people to come to your website and apply for your jobs.
Yep.
And they take a blanket approach to that. They say these are, all people ages 18 to 70 who live in this area might be interested in your job, right? And I think that there's something fundamentally wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I don't think, for huge multi-million-dollar corporations that operate worldwide, they are the exception, but we take their strategies and apply them as rule for everyone else, and that's wrong. Why I think that's wrong is because they assume that everyone is the same. Recruitment marketing should operate from the fundamental belief that every person is special and that there is a great person and a great personality for this job. And if we take the time to discover that first, that we can create great recruitment marketing that will compel the right person to apply, not just a warm body.
Well, it's kind of to put it more simply, if you target everyone, you're not targeting anybody, basically.
You nailed it. There's your soundbite.
Ting.
Plus one.
You may have it.
Right. No, it's a great point. And I think the other piece too is, right, I think they take a totally data approach. You have to listen first. That's actually why my agency is called 3 Years Media. Because when I was a kid, they always told me, oh, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen more than you talk. Right? And so I used to joke, well, I'll have 3 ears. I was that kid, right? I have 3 ears. I listen so well. I have 3 ears. And it kind of stuck.
That's funny.
And that's what makes the recruitment marketing different, is it starts with listening instead of data.
Yep. But say more. I mean, when you listen, you compile data, right?
Exactly. So when I say that we start with listening, it starts with interviewing the best people who have had that job. Trying to correlate what's similar about all of those people, what's fundamental to all of those people.
Are you using like profiles?
Yeah. So we do personas, recruitment marketing personas, especially for high volume, low retention roles like those in call centers, sales, right? The roles where if you did something different at the beginning, it could really change your whole business. I love those, right? And that's where the personas really fit in, is because they give you the strategy. They tell you what to say and how to say it to get the right person. Can
you think of an example?
Yeah, I actually have a customer doing that right now.
High volume, entry-level hiring.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is a nuanced example, but an example nonetheless. So one of my clients is the YMCA of Boulder Valley, and they have an after-school program that works from 2 to 6. And so basically kids get out of school, they're bused to the YMCA, and then you're their caregiver for 4 hours. That's a hard role to fill for a few reasons. It's limited hours, right? So it's definitely not full-time. There's not a lot of potential for it to become full-time. It's nonprofit pay implied. And it's working with kids. And some people don't necessarily like working with kids. That's just a reality.
Those are not the people you want to hire.
And those are not the people you're looking for, right? But these roles turn over rapidly for them. I'm talking, they start with 100 people and they probably turn over between 40 and 60 in a season. So one school year. So we went in and we're profiling their most successful people, the people who have been there forever. And we're able to identify retention opportunities. We're looking at where these people hang out. And so the reason why this is so much more, I think, interesting and effective than most data is because I am able to identify offline and online. Example, I found out that all of their best people really enjoy going to breweries on the weekends. It's something that's very bolder, but it's also, every single person, right? So we're talking about doing some like partnerships with breweries to see if we can't do a hiring event at the brewery.
And why not think out of the box?
Exactly. Because clearly thinking inside the box has not worked to date. We're still in the same position.
60% turnover, you said? That's rough.
In a year, every single year.
And all that time spent rehiring.
Retraining. Because these people have to have 200 hours of experience before they can be left alone. Yeah. And those complications are why we take such a nuanced approach, right? Though there's a lot of education. I think this actually applies to every role, not just high volume. But if we told people a little bit more about the job up front, real talk, I think that just that alone creates a different experience.
Well, and especially as we talk about entry level, Gen Z, millennials are now, they're so old. Gen Z, I really like to talk about.
Compared to me.
There's a new shiny thing to talk about it, first of all. But also, the demands that Gen Z will make upon the workforce include that sense of authenticity. So you better tell me about your job. I'm not going to apply for nothing if I don't really get it first.
Exactly.
So I want to talk about that a little bit. Can you think of examples of employers who their strategy to recruit college students and grads used to work for them, and they're kind of doing the same thing, and maybe it worked for millennials? Have you seen anybody really just flop because they haven't switched or they haven't shifted strategy yet?
Not necessarily the shift from generation to generation, but I'm actually seeing people fail purely because they're doing the same thing they did last year. Example, so I had a client who posted a job recently. They hired this job about a year and a half ago, maybe, not very long ago at all. They took the exact same approach this year that they took last year. This is a major university, very high profile role, and typically they have over 100 applicants. Last year they had 131 applicants. I want you to take a guess. How many people applied this year?
70.
27.
Oh, ouch.
So what I meant by, I don't think it's generation to generation. I think it's the reality of the times. Unemployment is really low. Things are shifting. There's a shift in the air. I don't know if it's political or the job market or the economy, but there are a lot of things moving right now, and it's changing everything, and it's happening on the bottom line. But I do have one example actually of someone who changed their model for Gen Z. Not that they had a significantly different model before, but I thought this example might be unique to. There's a company called Skill Scout. They do video job videos and employer branding videos. They're great. I have to do a little asterisk. I'm an advisor of this company, but that's why I know this. So they changed their apply process completely. They had a traditional apply on their website where you like fill out the form and do all the stuff, right? And they tore it all down and changed it. So the first step of the application was to watch a video and tell them what you noticed about the video as a videographer.
No kidding.
if you got through that round, so that's the first step. You don't sit there and re-plug your resume in 100 times. You just watch the video and do a quick work sample with some baseline information. Step 2, if you made it there, was a paid assessment. And I think this is a fantastic idea, no matter what industry you work in, if you're working with Gen Z. And there are companies that facilitate this as well, just companies like Parker Dewey that facilitate paying a undergrad to do some contract work. But this is basically what it is. And they come in and they say, create a video that shows me your style. Mm-hmm. This benefits them for 2 reasons. Number 1, it means that if they hire this person, they already have a work sample. Mm-hmm. So they can immediately take that person to a client and go, here's how they work. Meet this person. They put it on their website. You can see these samples. But the second piece is that they know if they can do the job, black and white. Yep. It's not the resume. They don't sit there and go over all these details and hire the best resume writer. They hire the best videographer.
Yeah, it's show me, don't tell me.
Exactly.
Cool. Have you had, I want to ask you this question about these having a difficult conversation with any of your clients, or if you know any stories that you've had or heard where it's really you saying politely, perhaps, at least in Minnesota, we try to be polite. I don't know. Like it's not, it's really not me that caused your recruitment campaign to fail. It's you, because you need to change your whole strategy. Like, what are those hard choices that employers have to face?
Yeah. So a lot of people, and I mean a lot, probably in the last year, I'd say over 100 people have come to me and said, I want a best-in-class recruiting program. What does that mean? And that is, it's like almost a trigger conversation for me because I'm like, well, one, it doesn't mean the same thing for every person, right? Just like we talked about interviewing, a blanket strategy isn't a blanket opportunity. It's a blanket opportunity for certain types of people who like certain types of things. And so what I keep coming up against, and this tough conversation I keep having, is telling people flat out that if you want to be best in class, you have to be completely different than everyone else. That doesn't mean...
That means you're the only one in your class.
Exactly. And I don't think we've set that expectation, right? Like in the startup world, in the marketing world, you have to be the number one and the best. And for some reason, we set this lower bar in recruiting where we just have this copy paste. And we steal things and steal ideas from each other without making them our own or making them special. And it's a real loss.
Yeah, there hasn't been enough we talk about disrupt HR all the time, but I think when it comes to really rethinking what talent acquisition could be, we're doing the same things we were 50 years ago. Exactly. You look at a job ad, a job posting, the concept is exactly the same as it was when people wrote their, what we did in the newspaper.
Yep.
Put a few words on a page and hope somebody applies, but it's just not creative enough anymore.
And I'll give you 2 examples of how I've actually helped customers do that, right? So the first one, they said, look at my career site and tell me what you think. Loaded question for me.
Are you ready?
Are you ready? Yeah. And I open it up and I say, I think it's generic. And I deflated this poor woman. I know I did because I heard it in her voice. I said, okay, name 3 companies. Any 3 you want to in the whole world. Name 3 for me. She named 3. And I pulled up the 3 and they all looked exactly like the one she had. And I said, okay, let's stop. Your company is completely different. This is a company that actually, they hire you for your skills. They don't hire any managers. They let all managers work to the top. So you become a manager by acting like a manager, not by designation, so it's a fascinating company, really cool. And I'm like, why don't you do a build your own path website where people can come in and decide the route they want to take to apply to a job? It's not gamification because it's not built on things we already know about you. It's about learning the traditional psychology of your best people and building paths that kind of answer their questions and creating curiosity, because curiosity is really what you hire for, right? And she's like, oh, that's the kind of thinking I want to see from people. If you want to be best in class, exactly, you have to be the only person in your class.
Well, and you have to know yourself. It sounds like what you do a lot is help them reflect on who they really are.
Yeah, ultimately, and who those people are.
Fast to do all that, any of that.
And not even just who they are, but who the people that are great for their business are.
Yeah.
Right? It's mirroring almost. That whole concept of, so there's a physical mirror. So if I yawn, you yawn. If I smile, you smile. We can do that in our recruitment marketing, right? We can create things that make people feel something and actually create a relationship through a digital experience. And so many people are just jumping over that for copy and paste stuff.
Interesting. Can I get back? Can we talk again about metrics? Because a marketing campaign, so many organizations could just kind of, cross their fingers and hope that things happen. But what should organizations actually be measuring and holding themselves accountable for?
So there's not one right answer. I hate being the it depends recruitment marketer, but I am. I just fundamentally am. So I tell people, number one, you have to know your bottom line. So whatever you're doing, right, you need to know what the ultimate goal is, what the ultimate outcome is. A lot of people start campaigns without that answer. Like that should be on your first outline of, I want to do this program, and this is the 3 to 5 things I'm going to measure. So I structure metrics in 2 buckets whenever, we're kind of trying to decide what the impact is. So long-term overall, that's those 5 things that matter the most to you. If I do this, these are the 5 things that will ultimately tell me that I succeeded. Short-term, you have to get really specific about the immediate impacts. So you take those 5 things and you break them down into smaller items. So time to fill. What metric, okay, I want to improve time to fill. I'm going to change my careers website to do that. What are the 3 things I'm going to do that'll on my careers website that contribute to time to fill, right? Because time to fill is not a clean metric. But the most important thing that most people do not understand. So I come from a traditional marketing background, and I worked at a very analytical company called care.com, and they taught me about baselines. And this is something that most HR and recruiting people just have never thought about. So when you say you had year-over-year growth, you always have to establish a baseline. What's normal growth year over year? What did you put on top of that? Growing year over year is not a success metric. Growing the expected amount plus some is your success metric. So always have a baseline to kind of compare. And if you don't already have that data, go online and find it. So if time to fill is your thing, go out and find the industry standard time to fill and put that as your target and try to cut it down by days until you get at least to the industry standard.
That's great. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, what you said earlier is about copying and pasting. It would make sense that you can't just use the same metrics that somebody else is using, that if it doesn't inform your progress, it doesn't tell you how you're progressing towards your goal.
You nailed it. So many people do that with social media. They try to copy and paste a dashboard, and they're like, but I got more followers this year. And I'm like, that's awesome. Exactly. That's great. I'm sure that number makes you feel good.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get any more this year, I tell you to go log off. Shut it down. Don't do it. If you didn't grow at all, right? It's the extra that makes the difference.
Yeah. Good point. Cool. Is there anything else that you prepared to say and I didn't ask you about yet?
I think ultimately I just want people to hear that idea that if you want to stand out, you have to do something completely different. If they take nothing away from our conversation, that is it, right?
Yeah. I think it's a great message, and especially resonates with students and grads because they have an expectation that, well, maybe it's not the expectation, but it's just a desire to really connect with their employers. And in an organization that doesn't try to get into their heads and their hearts, and does what everybody else does, it's not authentic, it's not genuine, and they won't connect.
Well, and it creates the expectation for the younger generation that this is just a job.
Yeah.
It reinforces every societal thing that we've always been told about work, that it's just a job, that you just show up, you do what you're told, you do the minimum, and then you go home or you find a better job. That's the expectation you set when you look exactly like everyone else, is that it's going to be just like they expect it to be.
So if that's okay with you, go ahead.
Yeah. If you want a bunch of people to, throw in half the effort, you get those folks. I don't want them.
Thank you, Katrina, for the
Thank
conversation.
you.
And for joining us.